Mark was tired. The long work shift inside the deep mining tunnels had left his body aching and his mind heavy. The air inside the tunnels was thick with dust, and the sound of machines never stopped. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and slowly climbed out to the surface. The bright lights of the mining settlement greeted him like a safe harbor. He carried his small food pack to the edge of the camp, where few workers stayed to eat alone. Mark liked to be quiet at this time. He sat on a rusty metal box and opened his ration meal. The smell was not very good, but it was enough to fill his stomach. As Mark began to eat, he noticed a movement near the shadows of the settlement walls. He turned his head slightly and saw a figure. It was a woman. Her skin was a soft mix of brown and orange, with small stripes like a wild cat. Her eyes were sharp and green, and her ears pointed like a feline's. She was watching him. But she did not come closer. Mark remembered stories about the virile race. They were known to be proud and hard to trust. Many miners said the virile hated humans after old trade fights. The stories told how the virile would not forgive easily and kept grudges for many years. The woman's clothes were worn and torn. She looked tired and hungry. Her hands held nothing, and her eyes sometimes looked at the food in Mark's hands. But she never spoke. She only watched quietly from a distance. Mark felt a strange feeling. He knew hunger well. He had shared food with others before when times were hard. He did not hate the virile woman. He just wanted to help. Slowly, Mark broke his bread in half. He placed one piece carefully on the ground near where the woman stood hidden. Then he stood up and started to walk away. The woman's eyes followed the bread piece. She took a small step forward, then stopped. Her eyes never left the food. Mark did not look back. He walked to the camp's sleeping quarters and sat down to rest. He wondered if she would eat the bread or just leave it there. Next morning, Mark woke early and headed to the mining tunnels. As he walked, he looked toward the place where he left the bread. The piece was gone. Later, during his break, Mark saw the virile woman again. This time, she was closer. She did not speak, but she looked at him with a strange mix of curiosity and caution. Mark smiled gently and took out a small piece of cooked meat from his food pack. He placed it quietly on a rock near her and stepped back. The woman looked at the meat, then quickly ate it. Her eyes met Mark's for a moment. She blinked slowly and then moved back into the shadows. Days passed. Every time Mark ate, he left a small portion of his meal near her usual place. The woman came quietly and took the food. The workers around. Mark warned him to be careful. They said the virile could trick humans. Some told stories of miners who shared with virile and lost their tools or were tricked. But Mark did not listen. He only saw the woman as a tired soul needing help. One cold evening, a strong wind blew across the settlement. The temperature dropped quickly. Mark noticed the woman sitting alone near the outer wall. She was shivering and pulled her thin cloak tight. Without saying a word, Mark took off his thermal shirt. It was thin, but it gave warmth. He placed it gently beside her and walked back inside. That night, Mark could not sleep well. He wondered if the woman had accepted his gift. He hoped she was safe. The next morning, the thermal shirt was gone from the wall. Mark smiled quietly. He saw the woman standing not far from the entrance of the camp. Her eyes searched for him. Mark walked slowly toward her. The woman did not run away. Instead, she stepped forward just a little and looked at him. Mark reached into his food pack and pulled out a small piece of fruit. He held it out. The woman took it carefully. For the first time? She nodded slightly. Mark felt a warm feeling in his heart. Maybe this was the start of something new. The work in the mines was hard and dangerous. Life was not easy for humans or the virile, but in that small act of sharing food, a bridge had begun. Mark did not know what the future would bring. He only knew that the virile woman was no longer just a shadow in the dark. She was there, close enough to share a meal and maybe, one day, share trust. And so, in the quiet settlement on a distant mining world, a human and a virile woman began a story that no one had expected. Days passed on the dusty mining planet. Mark continued his work deep inside the tunnels. Every break, every mealtime, he would leave a small part of his food near the shadow where the virile woman usually waited. She took the food quietly, without saying a word. Her green eyes watched him closely, but she kept her distance. Mark noticed she was strong and fast. When she moved, it was like watching a wild cat. Her body was lithe and agile. Sometimes when the wind blew, her soft orange-brown hair would dance like flames. She never spoke much, only small sounds or gestures. Mark named her Rena inside, his mind. The other miners watched Mark with surprise and suspicion. They whispered that he was wasting his food on a stranger who might be dangerous. Some said the Virel were not to be trusted. Others told stories of old fights and betrayals between humans and virile traders. But Mark did not care about their warnings. He had learned that kindness was important, even when others doubted. He remembered his own family back on Earth and how sharing food was a sign of trust and friendship. One evening, the sun was setting behind the jagged mountains. The mining settlement grew colder as night came. Mark saw Rena sitting alone near the outer wall. She wrapped her thin cloak tightly around her, but she still looked cold. The air was filled with dust and a chill that cut through clothes like a blade. Mark felt a pang of worry. He walked over to where she sat, holding his warm thermal shirt in his hands. Without a word, he placed the shirt beside her and turned to leave. Rena looked at the gift. For a moment, her eyes softened. Then she picked up the shirt and wrapped it around herself. She did not follow him, but her eyes stayed on Mark's back as he walked away. That night, Mark could not sleep well. He wondered what the virile thought of him. Did she see him as a friend or just another human to avoid? He hoped she felt safer now. The next morning, Mark woke early and went to the place where he left food and the shirt. The thermal shirt was gone. The spot was clean, as if someone had taken great care. Mark smiled quietly. He thought maybe Rena was beginning to trust him. When he looked up, he saw her not far away, standing just beyond the camp's lights. She did not run when she saw him. Instead, she stepped forward a little and looked directly at him. Her eyes showed something new, curiosity mixed with caution. Mark took a small piece of fruit from his pack and held it out. Rena took it carefully with her slender fingers. For the first time, she nodded. It was a small but important sign. From that day, Rena began to follow Mark more closely. She stayed near the camp during the day and watched him from a short distance. Mark felt like she was learning to trust him, even if she did not say it. One afternoon, Mark invited her to sit beside him on an empty crate. He shared his food with her. They ate in silence. The moment was simple, but it felt like a new kind of connection. Rena still did not speak many words, but Mark noticed she was watching him with softer eyes. Sometimes she tried to repeat small human words. Her voice was rough and quiet, but she tried. The workers started to notice the change. 2. Some miners stopped mocking Mark. A few even smiled when they saw Rena sitting beside him. The walls of suspicion were slowly cracking. Mark wanted to know more about Rena's past. One evening, as the stars appeared in the dark sky, he asked her softly about her clan and her life before the mines. Rena hesitated, then shared a few words. She told Mark she was separated from her people during a raid. She was alone and lost on this harsh planet. Mark listened carefully. He did not judge. or ask too many questions. He only wanted her to feel safe. In the days that followed, Rena began to show small signs of friendship. She helped Mark in small ways, carrying tools, watching for danger, and learning human customs. Mark taught her simple words. He showed her how to open food packs and use tools safely. She learned quickly, and her bright green eyes sparkled with excitement. Though Rena still kept some distance, she was no longer just a shadow in the dark. She was becoming a quiet companion. One night, a strong wind blew through the settlement. Dust swirled like a storm. Mark saw Rena shivering again. This time, he did not wait. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She looked up at him, surprised, but grateful. A soft sound came from her throat. It was almost a purr. Mark smiled and patted her head gently. He knew then that something had changed between them. The walls of fear and hate were falling. Rena stayed close. After that night, she walked beside Mark as they moved around the camp. Her eyes followed him like a loyal shadow. Mark felt hope. Maybe one day, humans and Viral could live without fear and hate. Maybe sharing food was only the first step to a better future. The mining planet was still a hard place. The tunnels were dangerous, and the days were long. But in the quiet moments of sharing and trust, Mark and Rena found something rare: friendship. The days grew longer, and the mining settlement bustled with activity. Mark's work in the tunnels remained hard, but the quiet moments with Rena gave him a reason to smile. The Viral woman who once watched from the shadows now walked close, beside him. One morning, as the red sun rose over the dusty horizon, Mark noticed Rena standing a little closer than usual. She looked nervous. Her sharp green eyes searched his face. Mark stopped and waited patiently. He felt that something important was about to happen. Rena opened her mouth and tried to speak. Her voice was soft and rough, not like the clear human speech Mark was used to. She said a word slowly. Rena. Mark's eyes lit up. Rena, he repeated with a smile. Your name is Rena. She nodded shyly. For the first time, she spoke a word to him, and it made Mark feel closer to her. After that, Rena began to try more words. Mark taught her simple greetings and phrases. They laughed together when she stumbled over the sounds. One day, as they sat eating together near the campfire, Rena told Mark a little about her past. Her voice was broken, but her meaning clear. My clan, she said, they live far away. I was taken from them during fight. Mark listened carefully. He imagined the pain of being separated from family and home. Rena's eyes grew sad as she spoke. Humans and Viral fight. I think humans hate Viral. I did too. Mark understood. Many on this planet had old reasons for fear and hate. But his small kindness had changed something in her heart. Rena looked at Mark with new respect. She saw him not just as a human, but as someone who cared. The miners began to accept her too. She helped Mark carry tools and learned how to handle equipment. Her feline skills made her quick and careful. One afternoon, Mark showed Rena how to use a simple scanner to check tunnel safety. She watched with bright eyes and asked many questions with her new words. As Rena learned more, her confidence grew. She no longer stayed hidden in the shadows. She walked proudly beside Mark, earning smiles from the workers. One evening, Mark invited Rena to his small room in the settlement. The space was simple but warm. He showed her pictures from Earth on a small hollow screen. Images of forests, oceans, and cities amazed Rena. She reached out to touch the glowing images. Home, she whispered. Mark nodded. Yes, home. They shared stories that night. Mark told her about his family and his dreams. Rena spoke of her hopes to find her lost clan and live in peace. Though they came from different worlds, their friendship grew stronger. One day, a sudden warning came through the camp. A dust storm was fast approaching. The workers hurried to secure equipment and find shelter. Mark looked for Rena. He found her near the entrance, watching the darkening sky. Without hesitation, he took her hand. "Come," he said firmly. Together, they rushed to the safety tunnels deep below the ground. The storm howled above as dust filled the air. In the dark shelter, Rena held Mark's hand tightly. She trusted him completely now. When the storm passed, the settlement was covered in a thick layer of dust. The miners stepped outside and began cleaning. Rena walked beside Mark, no longer silent but ready to face the hard world with him. The name. Rena was no longer just a word. It was a promise of trust, friendship, and hope. Mark knew their journey was only beginning, but with Rena by his side, he felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The mining tunnels were dark and deep. Mark knew every corner and every dangerous spot. Each day, the work was harder and the risks greater. But with Rena by his side, the long hours felt less lonely. One morning, the crew began their shift early. The air inside the tunnels was heavy with dust. Machines hummed and workers shouted to one another. Suddenly, a loud rumble echoed through the narrow passage. The ground shook beneath their feet. Mark's heart jumped. He shouted a warning to the others. "Tunnel collapse! Get out now!" Dust and rocks began to fall. The miners ran quickly toward the exit. In the chaos, Mark felt a sharp pain in his leg. A large rock had fallen and pinned him against the wall. He tried to move, but could not. The weight was too heavy. Panic rose in his chest. "Help!" he called out as loudly as he could. Rena was nearby. She heard his voice and dashed toward him. Her sharp eyes searched the rubble. Without fear, she jumped over fallen beams and sharp rocks. Her claws helped her climb and clear smaller stones. Mark watched in awe as Rena worked quickly to free him. "Hold on," she whispered softly. With a strong push, she moved the rock enough for Mark to pull his leg free. Mark stood, wincing, but thankful. "You saved me," he said with deep gratitude. Rena nodded but did not smile. "You would do the same for me," she replied quietly. The miners gathered around, amazed by Rena's bravery. Some who had doubted her before now looked with new respect. After the accident, Rena stayed even closer to Mark. She walked beside him during the shifts and waited for him at the camp. Mark noticed how she watched him carefully, always alert. It was like she was his shadow, protecting him silently. One evening, as the camp grew quiet, Mark and Rena sat near the fire. "You trust me now," Mark said softly. Rena looked at him. "I do," she answered simply. The night air was cool, but the warmth between them was strong. Their bond grew with each passing day. The dangers of the mines did not disappear, but with Rena's help, Mark felt stronger and safer. Together, they faced the hard life of the mining world. Their friendship was a light in the dark tunnels. The mining settlement was alive with activity. Machines roared and workers moved quickly. Yet, beneath the busy life, whispers and glances followed Rena wherever she went. Some miners still did not trust her. They spoke quietly about the Varel, woman who had come from the shadows and now walked with Mark. Rumors spread fast. Some said she might be spying for others. Some thought she was dangerous. Mark heard these stories. He felt anger, but also sadness. He knew Rena was kind and brave. He decided to stand for her. "Rena helped save my life," he told anyone who would listen. "She is not a threat." Despite Mark's words, suspicion grew. The miners were afraid of the unknown. They remembered old fights between humans and Varel. One night, a sudden alarm broke the calm. The settlement's security lights flashed. Red. A group of mercenaries had arrived. These mercenaries were known for stealing rare minerals and capturing workers to sell as slaves. The camp was not ready for an attack. Mark and Rena sprang into action. Rena's sharp senses detected the mercenaries before the alarm sounded. She warned Mark quickly. "Danger! Mercenaries coming!" Mark gathered the workers and directed them to safety tunnels. Rena moved silently among the shadows, watching for enemy movements. The mercenaries entered the camp with weapons drawn. They shouted orders and tried to capture miners. Rena was fast and silent. She used her agility to block attackers and help workers escape. Mark fought bravely, standing close to Rena. Together, they protected the settlement. The workers saw Rena in a new light. She was not an outsider, but a protector. When security forces finally arrived, the mercenaries were pushed back. The camp was safe, but the danger had left a mark. Mark looked at Rena with pride. She was no longer just a shadow in the camp. She was a friend and a hero. The miners' fear began to fade. They started to accept her as one of their own. Rena's eyes shone with quiet happiness. She had found a place where she belonged. Together, Mark and Rena faced the challenges of the mining world. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. The settlement was quiet, but tense after the mercenary attack. The miners repaired damage and talked in small groups. Fear was still there, but hope was growing too. Mark and Rena knew the danger might return. They prepared quietly, training the workers and planning defenses. One evening, as the stars shone bright in the clear sky, the mercenaries came back. This time, they were stronger and more determined. They entered the camp with weapons ready. The miners looked to Mark and Rena for help. Rena moved like a shadow. Her sharp claws and quick reflexes blocked attacks before they could reach Mark. She was always close, watching his back. Mark fought bravely. He used every skill he had learned in the mines and from the settlement's security training. Together, they were a team. Mark could feel Rena's presence like a protective shadow at all times. The battle was fierce but short. The miners, led by Mark and protected by Rena, held their ground until the security forces arrived. After the fight, the miners cheered. Rena's courage and loyalty were clear to everyone. Mark looked at Rena and smiled. "You are more than a friend. You are family." Rena nodded. "I stay. I protect." From that day on, Rena walked with Mark everywhere. She was his shadow, his protector, and his companion. The bond between human and virile grew stronger. Together they faced the future with hope and strength. The days after the battle were calm, but filled with many changes. The miners worked hard to rebuild and repair the settlement. The memory of the mercenary attacks still lingered in the air. Mark and Rena grew closer with every day. The small bond of sharing food and trust had turned into a strong friendship. One morning, Rena stood at the edge of the settlement looking out toward the endless desert beyond. Her green eyes were filled with thought. Mark approached quietly. "You think about your clan?" he asked gently. Rena nodded. "Yes. I want to find them. I want to go home." Mark understood her feelings. He knew the pain of missing family. "And a place to belong." "I will help you," he said firmly. "You are not alone." Rena smiled softly for the first time. It was a quiet hope shining in her eyes. Over the next days, they planned the journey. Supplies were gathered and maps studied. The desert beyond the settlement was harsh and dangerous, but it was Rena's only chance to find her lost clan. Chuckhurt. Miners wished them luck. Many thanked Rena for her bravery and friendship. She was no longer just a virile outsider. She was part of the community. The day to leave came. Mark and Rena stood side by side. Rena held a small carved stone in her hand. It was a gift from her people, a token of loyalty and protection. "I give this to you," she said, "for trust and friendship." Mark accepted the stone with respect. "I will keep it safe." Instead of turning away, Rena stepped closer and took Mark's hand. "Where you go, I go. she said simply. Mark felt a warm strength in her words. The shadow that once watched from afar now walked with him openly and proudly. Together, they faced the vast desert and the unknown future. No longer alone, they walked forward as friends, as allies, and as something more. The story of a human and a virile woman began with a shared meal and grew into a bond that no fear or hatred could break.